This podcast is brought to you by the IIEA, sharing ideas, shaping policy.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the IIEA and to the session today, which is part of Future Proofing Europe. This is a project which is supported by the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade. We are absolutely delighted to have with us today a very distinguished guest, Dr. Filip Ivanović, who is the Deputy Prime Minister of Montenegro, with particular responsibility, as I understand it, for European affairs and for foreign affairs. You're very, very welcome. It's your first visit to Ireland, but we hope it's the first of many visits to Ireland. Before formally introducing our speaker, just a few housekeeping things. The presentation will be 20 minutes, roughly, and that will be followed by questions and answers or comments. Feel free to join if you are online. You can send your questions in using the Q&A function on your screen during the presentation or later. When doing so, you might identify any relevant organization with which you are affiliated. The questions and answers and the presentation are on the record. For those of joining us on Twitter, use the handle at IIEA, and we are also live streaming this afternoon's discussion, so a very warm welcome to those joining us on YouTube. It's now my pleasure to formally introduce our guest speaker. Dr. Filip Ivanović is the Deputy Prime Minister for Foreign and European Affairs of Montenegro, a position that he has held since July 2024. Prior to this, he was Minister for Foreign Affairs. From 2018 to 2021, he was member of the Working Group for the Negotiations on Accession of Montenegro to the EU for Chapter 25, Science and Research. Dr. Ivanović has a very, very distinguished academic career, both in Europe and beyond Europe. And I won't list off all of the various institutions where you've worked, but they are truly very, very impressive. So it's with great pleasure that we look forward to what you have to say about the long road to Montenegro's accession to the European Union.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, first of all, I'm very grateful for the kind invitation and for the kind introduction to this presentation of mine. And of course, I'm very grateful to everybody who is here in the audience following the presentation and me saying a few good words about the European path of Montenegro. So it all started for Montenegro many years ago, but 13 years ago, we formally started the negotiations on accession of Montenegro to the European Union. So already now, perhaps in 2025, it feels quite a long time. Many governments have changed. Many people who started the process are fortunately still there, but some retired, some went to some other places, some new people, some new young people came into the process. So this is why it is a generational process. Not just of one generation, but of several generations. And what we are hoping is that this generation of not just politicians, but of course of civil servants, of people in the academia, of people in the civil society, and of our citizens will be that generation that completes the process and that finally sees Montenegro as the full-fledged member of the European Union. Let me right away say that the goal of my government, the goal which was also agreed with the European Commission and has a very wide support of EU member states, is that Montenegro completes the process of negotiation by the end of next year, so by the end of 2026, with the goal of Montenegro becoming a full-fledged member of the European Union by 2028. So since there are at the moment 27 EU member states, please remember the catchphrase that we have, which is 28 by 28. So Montenegro becoming the 28th member state by 2028. This whole process is not a process of one country or one government or one administration. It's not even a two-way street. It's, let's say, multiple streets that include Montenegro, include, of course, the institutions in Brussels, namely the European Commission, but it also includes all 27 current member states of the European Union. And this is why we are trying, especially in the past year, and we will do also the same thing during next year, to speak to as many as possible officials in EU member states, to speak at institutes like this, to speak to the civil society, to speak to the academia, to the researchers, and so on, in order to promote the case of Montenegro. And I think that there is very good ground for that. And in all of the EU countries which I visited, I saw that there is a real desire and real readiness of EU member states to push for the enlargement. And Montenegro really wants to use, to take advantage of this readiness and of this desire. I am here in Ireland not just because it is one of the EU member states, but because Ireland will also take over the presidency of the European Union in the second half of next year, which, as you remember, is the period when we want to finish the negotiations on accession. So the Irish presidency is going to be very valuable and very important for us. And this is why we need the strongest possible support from the Irish government, but also from its academic and civil sector, because it's not just, of course, always the politicians, but it's also the public opinion that counts, and it's always so important to speak with people that actually shape the public opinion. Let me share with you a few things that we consider successes on the European path in the past 2 years. So, as I said, for 13 years, the process was ongoing. We managed to open all negotiation chapters, which is a success in itself. But at some period, let's face it, since 2017, the process of European integration seemed like a never-ending process. And it seemed to be too technical, and it seemed to be like a moving target. So it meant somehow we felt that whatever we do was not enough. And then we were faced also with the new methodology of accession, which said that you need to get the positive report on advancement in chapters 23 and 24, which are related to the rule of law and the fight against organized crime and corruption. And only when you get the positive report on the advancement of these chapters, then you can move forward with other chapters. So it took a while, but last June, in June 2024, Montenegro was the first candidate country to receive the positive, its so-called IBAR, which means Interim Benchmark Assessment Report, for chapters 23 and 24. So this was a historic date, historic moment, not just for Montenegro, but also for the European Union, because, as I said, we were the first candidate country to get the positive IBAR. So with this kind of experience, we can also share the things that we needed to do with other candidate countries in order to get positive IBAR, but the European Commission can also use its own experience with Montenegro on how to help and support other candidate countries in order to pass this threshold. So this basically marked a moment since which we started closing chapters. Last year, in December, at the Intergovernmental Conference held in Brussels, we closed 3 negotiation chapters. This year, in June, just a couple of months ago, we closed an additional chapter which was related to public procurement, so a very important chapter that falls into the fundamentals. And we are hoping also that by the end of this year, there will be at least, I would say, 2 intergovernmental conferences between Montenegro and European Union, at which we will close an additional number of chapters. So if all happens as we have planned, and if all happens as we have agreed also with the European Commission, with the help and support by EU member states, then this goal of closing the negotiations by the end of 2026 is, of course, ambitious, but is realistic. So one part of the process of accession obviously is a, let's say, technical one. There are a set of criteria and standards that you need to fulfill, and you need to work really hard across institutions and across society in order to fulfill them. And we are working very hard to meet these criteria, and I think that we have been very successful in that. The other dimension of the whole process is a political one, or if you want, a geopolitical one. So as I said, for quite some time, we felt that the process was purely technical and that it was like a never-ending process. Then, unfortunately, we witnessed a geopolitical tragedy, the Russian invasion on Ukraine, and this was the moment when the European Union and institutions in Brussels started to think as geopolitical players. So they understood that if EU wants to be a geopolitical player and if it wants to think in a geostrategic manner, then enlargement should be one of its priorities. And the proverbial window of opportunity opened with that. So Montenegro was very keen on jumping through that window of opportunity, and we are doing our best to do so before this window of opportunity perhaps closes. However, what we believe on our side, and what I think that I could conclude also from many conversations that I had in Brussels and across different EU member states, is that the enlargement is actually one of the best, if not the best, policy of the European Union. And I interpret it in a perhaps different manner. And I often say that without enlargement, the European Union cannot justify its very name. Because if it doesn't include in itself different countries from the European continent, then it can hardly be called European. And if we are not all united, then it can hardly be called Union. And what are the countries that are the best proof of that? The countries that are in the heart of Europe and in the heart of the Mediterranean, which is precisely the countries of Western Balkans, including, of course, Montenegro. So unless the European Union means business, so to say, and unless the European Union wants to be serious with its geostrategic orientation, then what it needs to do is, of course, to accept into the European Union the countries of the Western Balkans. And I'm very happy to say that Montenegro is the most advanced candidate country, the front runner in the process, and it can actually serve as an excellent success story of the European Union, of the political process, but also of the European values. Because if we think about the European Union as a union based on values, the main thing you need to do is to share those values, to expand those values, to promote them to different countries and to different peoples. So Montenegro is already there. It is in Europe, as I said, in the heart of the European continent, in the heart of the Mediterranean. It has been there in terms of political will and the negotiations for 13 years. It has now accelerated its path towards the European Union and is actually the best candidate country to become the first next member of the European Union. So why is this important? For three things. First of all, of course, it's important for my country and for my people, because entering the European Union, and I don't need to talk about that to you, what it means to be part of European Union and what it opportunities opens to all layers of the society, to students, researchers, doctors, farmers, lawyers, and so on and so on. So it's a big opportunity. Our people will feel the benefits of becoming member of the European Union, and it will be beneficial for our society. It will be also beneficial for the European Union because, as I said, then the European Union will also start or continue to justify its own name, but it will also affirm the credibility of the European Union. Unless there is enlargement and unless it happens very soon, then the very credibility of the European Union will be, I would say, put into question. And the third thing is that it would be beneficial for countries surrounding Montenegro and also for other candidate countries. Because now we don't have only Western Balkan countries that are candidate countries, we also have Ukraine, Moldova, we have somewhat Georgia, now most recently also Armenia said that they want to pursue better relations with the European Union with the intention of perhaps joining the European Union in recent future. So having a new member state and having a candidate country that has completed the process, has succeeded, and that has become a member of the European Union will be a great example, a great encouragement for all the candidate countries. And this encouragement for candidate countries has also two dimensions. One dimension is as I said, the proof of credibility of the European Union that says if you are fulfilling the criteria, if you are fulfilling standards, then you are actually getting closer to the European Union with the final perspective of becoming a member. And I hope that Montenegro will be an example of that. But the second dimension, which is very important for the European Union as well, is that with the realization, actual realization of the enlargement, then all those voices that are coming, sometimes from within the European Union, sometimes from within the candidate countries, but very often from third countries, that whatever candidate country does, the European Union will not accept it, then these claims will be proven false. And this is actually how the European Union can expand its values and can expand its influence outside the current 27 member states. So I would just perhaps conclude now and give the floor to the audience, but I would just repeat a couple of important things. So first of all, Montenegro is, as I said, the most advanced country in the process of European integration. Montenegro wants to finish the whole process by the end of next year. Montenegro wants to become a member of the European Union by 2028. This whole process and the success of Montenegro will be also the success of the European Union as an idea and as an organization, but it will also be a good thing for each and every EU member state, because the more we are, the stronger we are, and it will be a good example for all other candidate countries that wish to follow this example. This is why we need the support of every European Union member state, including, of course, Ireland, not just, as I said, the political establishment and the government, but also the academia and different segments and parts of the society. And again, Irish presidency in the second half of next year is going to be extremely important for Montenegro and for this whole plan and idea for us to finish the whole process. So we are counting very much on the support and help of Ireland, as I said, in all different aspects of Irish politics and society. So once again, thank you so much for this opportunity, and thank you so much to the audience for being here, and I would be very happy to answer any question you might have. Thank you.
Well, while people are thinking about questions, could I maybe start with one? And you referred a few times there to a community of values, and Europe has experienced difficulties internally with commitments to the rule of law. How do you see the challenges for your administration in that area in the context of the accession?
Well, as I said, the most important, well, of course, all chapters are important, but the most important chapters for being able to proceed with closing other chapters were precisely chapters 23 and 24. 23 is rule of law, 24 is fight against organized crime and corruption. We needed to do quite a lot of reforms in our system in order to receive this positive interim benchmark assessment report that we received last June. It included, of course, a reform of legislation in different aspects of it, but it also included several very important appointments within the, for example, Constitutional Court, within the judiciary, Council. It included also the election of the Supreme State Prosecutor, the election of the Special State Prosecutor, which deals with special crimes of organized crime and corruption, and we managed to do it. This, however, does not mean, and we do not consider it in that way, that the process is finished and that we don't need to do anything else. On the contrary, there is a list of the so-called benchmarks or criteria that we still need to fulfill after getting the positive report until we finish the negotiations. And by the way, these chapters are the first to be screened so that you can proceed with other chapters, but it will be also the last ones to be screened when you finish the whole process. So there will be a sort of a double check by the European Union of the progress that we have made. But when you talk about challenges, I would say that one of the challenge in general, not just in the rule of law for countries that are rather small like Montenegro, are the administrative capacities. So you always need more people, but not just more people in general, but you need more trained people to do a certain job. And this is why we are collaborating and cooperating with a number of countries, with many EU member states, on improving the training of our people, especially in the judiciary system. We have been cooperating also with our UK and US partners in this regard. So we are hoping that we will elevate the level of competencies, capacities, and of course of transparency and fairness of the whole system. But I would say that receiving the positive IBAR last year was a specific positive stamp of Brussels on the progress that we have made. But the very fact that these two chapters are so closely monitored means that the European Union gives quite a lot of value to the rule of law, and Montenegro is very keen on reaching the standard that it needs to reach in order to become member. And we are not doing it just for the administrative fulfillment of the criteria that are there, but we are also doing it because of our citizens that deserve the rule of law and that deserve the equality before the law.
This gentleman down here.
Thank you. Dobrodošli u Dublinu.
Bolje vas našli.
I da živiš 100 godina. I love it. 28 by 28, but you are late. On the 12th of March 2003, at the funeral of Zoran Đinđić in Belgrade, when I was the UN coordinator for Serbia and Montenegro from 2000 to 2004, I had a meeting with Romano Prodi and George Papandreou, and we agreed the Western Balkans should come in no later than 10 years later, 2013, which became the Thessaloniki Declaration. However, I fully appreciate everything that you've been saying, and I agree with your analysis. My question to you, Mr. Deputy Prime Minister, is how can you manage to have more influence on Belgrade so that that regime can take its aspirations to join the European Union much more seriously than it does? And the second question I have for you is, in light of the position and unreliability of that government of Alexander Vučić, in particular I'm thinking of Vulin at the time, to provide genuine refuge for democratic liberal Russian exiles, can Montenegro do more for those people who are also of the same scheme of European values, but come from Russia, in addition, of course, to those from Ukraine? Thank you.
Thank you, hvala puno, and especially thank you for reminding of the Thessaloniki Declaration of 2003. Even I forgot to mention it in my opening remarks, but I think that we need to keep reminding ourselves of this declaration, because as you have said, the plan was that within 10 years, the process of integration of Western Balkan countries will be done. So it's been 22 years since the Thessaloniki Declaration, and I really think that it's due time to fulfill the promise that was given in 2003. If this plan has been pursued with more vigor and with more dedication, perhaps many of the things that we have witnessed in the past 20 years would not have happened. But we don't need to dwell on the past too much, but let's look at the future. But speaking about the past, let me give you another detail. In 2017 or 2018, the then President Juncker said there will be no enlargement until 2025. It's 25 now, but we are talking about 28 as a really good goal and outcome for enlargement. But I'm mentioning this, it's also in relation to the capacities that we were talking about. Imagine what does it do to a candidate country, a statement that in 8 years there will be no enlargement whatever you do. How discouraging that is. So it influenced that, as I mentioned in a conversation with you earlier, that this enlargement fatigue was echoed by the waiting room fatigue of candidate countries. But now is the time to reinvigorate the whole process. And it brings me to the answer to your first question. And of course, as a government official of a neighboring country, I will not give any concrete comments on that. But as I said in my opening remarks, supporting Montenegro, helping Montenegro, and having Montenegro fulfill the goal of becoming a member of the European Union is the best encouragement for all other candidate countries and is the best answer to any kind of skepticism that we have been hearing or that we will hear in the next period. In many or in a few of the neighboring countries of Montenegro, but not just there, but also in some other areas, you have these voices that are saying enlargement will never happen. Western Balkan countries will never become members of the EU. Whatever we do, it will not suffice because the EU is fed up with enlargement and it will not accept new member states. Having Montenegro finish the negotiations and having Montenegro actually becoming a member of the EU proves all these narratives, which can be very dangerous from time to time, it proves them false. So the best help that all of us can give to any country, or the best hope that we can give to any people from the candidate countries, is to actually finish the process and is to fulfill the goal that we have envisioned in our minds and in our politics. When it comes to the second question, Montenegro was, I'm saying was, maybe it still is, but I know that in the first year or two, Montenegro was a European country with the biggest number of Ukrainian refugees per capita. So dozens of thousands of Ukrainian refugees came to Montenegro. We tried to ease their lives there because we understood what kind of tragedy they were living, and we also changed some legislation in order to make the everyday life easier for children to going to school and health insurance and so on and so on. And in all the conversations that I had with the officials from Ukraine, I learned that the Ukrainian people who found refuge in Montenegro felt like at home and did not have any kind of any kind of unpleasant situations or moments. So we were actually there to help, and we are of course not glad about everything that's happening there, but we were glad that many of the people decided precisely to come to Montenegro, where they can feel safe and be treated as equals.
You mentioned earlier when we were speaking about the high level of political support in Montenegro for EU accession. Most of our democracies are threatened by misinformation and disinformation. Is this something you see happening in Montenegro in the context of what EU membership will mean?
I must say this is not a widespread phenomenon in Montenegro, especially not in those media that are widely read. There are, of course, some more or less obscure media that work exclusively online. There are some narratives that are in social media and so on, but that echo these voices that I mentioned, that whatever we do, we will not succeed in becoming a member of the European Union. But if you take a look at numbers, and I say numbers in terms of public support of the of Montenegro becoming a member of the European Union, these are not having much success. Because there is a large support of the public opinion for EU accession of Montenegro. A very important thing is that, and I keep repeating it, that all political parties that are present in the Parliament of Montenegro have European integration as their priority in terms of foreign policy, that all these reforms, appointments that we needed to do were not, of course, just in the purview of the government, but many of them were in the purview of the Parliament and needed to be voted and adopted, and they were all adopted very smoothly without votes against. So it testifies to a sort of a unified vision of all political parties, which, let's be honest, have very different views on many different issues. But when it comes to the European Union, we haven't had any kind of this disruption or any kind of problem in pursuing these solutions that were important for the European path. But this is something that we constantly need to work on, both in Montenegro, but from the side of the European Union, both in terms of institutions, but also of EU member states, because we cannot take it for granted. You constantly need to explain to your public what it means to become a member of the EU, why some steps that we need to take are important, why some steps that we need to take are perhaps unpopular, but that will bring to a certain bigger goal that we have in the end. And what I would always emphasize is that we must not allow to disappoint the public. And when I say we, again, I mean both us in Montenegro, but also in the European Union, because people are following everything and they see all these positive and encouraging statements from EU officials, from the officials of EU member states. So if these statements and promises are not fulfilled, then it will be a very bad thing for the whole European idea as an idea, not just in Montenegro, but it could also influence the other candidate countries. So we need to stay vigilant on that.
Yes, Heather.
Thank you again, Deputy Prime Minister. When enlargement occurs, and I very much hope it does for the reasons that you've outlined, and I noticed that President von der Leyen this morning reiterated at least the Commission's commitment to it in her State of the Union address. Do you think it likely that the next enlargement will be a single country, yourselves, or do you think there will be a group of countries? And I wonder how the record that you've outlined of the closing of the satisfactory closing of the chapters and the progress on the two crucial chapters, how is that compared to the progress in, say, Albania or North Macedonia, or indeed any of the other candidates?
Well, we understand that there are two, I hope, parallel processes within the European Union. One process is the discussion on the internal reforms. The other is enlargement. These two need to go hand in hand, because while European Union is, of course, discussing its internal reforms, European Union also needs to become ready for accepting new member states, and this is what we believe in. The second thing is that we also strongly believe and strongly support the so-called merit-based approach. So it means that if you actually finish the job, then you should become a member state. And we don't believe that us or anyone else should wait for somebody else to reach the same level of fulfillment of criteria in order to have some sort of a group accession or group admission. So on the one hand, as I said, we strongly support the merit-based approach. We believe we are number one in that regard, and this is why we are, of course, promoting for the membership of Montenegro into the European Union within the next 3 years. But on the other hand, we are also strong supporters of the very concept and idea of enlargement because of the reasons that I have outlined a little bit previously. And to put it most succinctly, is that we believe that every country that wants to become a member of the European Union should become a member of the European Union once these standards and criteria are fulfilled. And we are already helping with some of our advanced experience that we had previously. We are already helping some of the countries that are only starting the whole process. And we will also be a very strong advocate of enlargement once we become member of the European Union, and every candidate country can count on our support and on our help. But to be very honest, we want to be the first.
Heather.
Thank you very much, Deputy Prime Minister. I'm Heather Burke, IIEA researcher. I'm interested to hear about how your background in academia has informed your work as a politician working on EU enlargement, and what are some of the greatest differences between the theory of EU enlargement and the practice that you have noticed?
That's a very interesting question, and perhaps I will not go into details, but you know, the union is a very important concept in philosophy, and especially in ancient and medieval philosophy that I study and that have been working on previously. So it also envisions in ancient philosophy a certain scale or a certain ladder that you need to climb in order to reach this unification with one or the very union. So sometimes I compare this whole process of going step by step and closing chapters and fulfilling standards and criteria, going up until you find reach the final goal of being united in this case with the other 27 countries. But on the other hand, my previous academic background, which is, as I said, in philosophy, has perhaps, I cannot be sure, but perhaps it has helped me to understand things better, to form arguments better, to try to be rational, and to try to explain myself in the most comprehensible way possible.
Barry.
Thank you very much, Deputy Prime Minister. Barry Colfer, I'm the Director of Research here. Thanks again for being with us and for your most interesting presentation. I was just thinking about what you said about the high level of public support in Montenegro for EU membership and the consensus amongst the political parties. We have something similar in Ireland, actually, amongst the European Union countries. We're, alongside Malta, probably the only one that doesn't have an anti-EU sentiment in our parliament. It's just an interesting parallel between our countries. But I'm just curious, can you say anything about why you think sentiment in Montenegro amongst the public is positively disposed towards EU membership? Are there any specific advantages or opportunities people foresee, or is it a more kind of general abstract thing that people support? Thanks.
Well, I think it's both. But if we talk about this general sentiment, then I would say that people in Montenegro feel themselves Europeans. They feel themselves Europeans both geographically and culturally. And very often for us, and I experienced it myself previously when I lived in some of the EU member states, for us it's very difficult to understand in EU member states when people talk about Europe, they think European Union. So if you go to a post office, I want to send a postcard to Montenegro, and they ask me, is it Europe? I say, yes, of course it's Europe. But no, then I realize that they mean European Union, and then of course the stamp is more expensive if it's not within the European Union. So what I'm saying is that people consider themselves to be Europeans in terms of geography and culture and history and so on. And for them, of course, then it's only natural to be part of the biggest club in Europe that's called the European Union. On the other hand, I'm actually very sorry that we didn't have this kind of segmented or stratified research, but it would be one of my recommendations to see what the European Union means to different parts of the society. So what it means to students, to pupils, to doctors, to lawyers, to farmers, to different professions and different segments, to different ages, different people who are younger or older or are retired and so on. But I think that there are things that people simply love, which is, for example, free travel. So since 2009, we had this visa-free regime that people can go to Schengen area without visas. So they finally could, some of them could revisit and some of them could visit for the first time some of the beautiful cities across the European continent without the burden of getting the visa. For some, it means getting to study at some of the very good universities in EU member states, to meet new people, to make new friends. For the farmers, it could probably mean some perhaps subsidies from the state and then the opportunity to go with their products to a much bigger market, and so on and so on. But I think for everybody, a very important thing that somehow coincides in these polls that we see from time to time. If you take a look, what is the foreign power or foreign country to which Montenegro should most lean on, it's always European Union #1. And then if you see what is the biggest, let's say, expectation of the people in Montenegro, they say rule of law. So I would say that these two things also coincide in some part, and I think that people think that being part of the club of the European Union, it means that also your rule of law will be elevated to a higher level, and that people will be basically equal before the law. So I'm not that happy to admit that, but this was not always the case in the past decades in Montenegro, and not just in Montenegro, of course. But I think that the European Union gives a certain hope to people that their lives will be better in every segment once we become members or member of the European Union. And this is why sometimes I use these terms that are not political, like I use the term disappointment. So we cannot allow to disappoint people, because these things are not just political, they are also emotional and social.
Can I just ask a very quick question there? Because we did, of course, have 28 members before, and we reduced to 27. And the reason that was because of the concept of the loss of sovereignty by being members of a union. This isn't an issue in Montenegro. You don't see it as diminishing your sovereignty as a nation.
No, I don't think that there is this discussion or thoughts about diminishing the sovereignty. Maybe there are some segment of our society that think about the as a small nation, small country with certain cultural and historical specificity of being emerged into such a big community, that maybe some of this would be lost. So it's more cultural and historical rather than in terms of political sovereignty.
Sorry, Mari, and then Francis.
Thank you. Thank you very much indeed, Prime Minister. Mari Cross, member of the Institute, and I chair the Future of Europe Committee. There are some suggestions among EU member states, because the enlargement is taking so long, that maybe the idea of a partial accession might be of use in order to keep the momentum. And I just wonder, do you feel that would be helpful, or would it actually be negative in just taking in certain parts of, in allowing a member state to be part of some programs in the Union, for example, some access to some funds, cohesion funds, maybe even some of the single market, in order to maintain momentum? Or perhaps there is a negative aspect to that, and it's better just to go full steam ahead. Thank you.
Thank you. It's a very important issue because I would say that in general it's a good idea, but of course it could be dangerous. It could be dangerous because it could lead to something we call cherry picking. So then you want something and then you fulfill certain criteria to get it, but you don't fulfill some other criteria. But of course it depends on the candidate countries and their vision of the level of participation or integration to the European Union. As far as Montenegro is concerned, we see this partial or gradual integration as a good thing, as long as it is not a substitute for full membership into the European Union. So, and we have also promoted some of these aspects of gradual integration. For example, it hasn't happened yet, but maybe it will. If, for example, Montenegro is 100% aligned with common foreign and security policy of the European Union, then why not have a chair at the Foreign Affairs Council? Not to engage in discussions or to vote or take part in the decision, but at least to be there as an observer, because we need to get used to how the things work there, and hopefully within 2 or 3 years we will have a full membership chair in this committee. Some of the things, this is from a political point of view, some of the things that are very important for the citizens is to have the feeling of how it is to actually be in the European Union. So I mentioned previously the single euro payment area will be of great benefit for us. So on the 6th or 7th of October, there will be the first transactions of Montenegro being part of the single euro payment area. So it will ease the financial transactions for individuals, but also for enterprises with no commission or with very low commission, unlike in previous times. What we are also advocating for, and I hope it will be solved by the beginning of next year, is the issue of roaming, so that people from Montenegro and other candidate countries can use their phones in EU member states without paying huge bills. So these are some of the things that actually people feel, and that they can see what it looks like to be part of European Union. However, we should not be in any kind of illusion that these things could replace the full membership to the European Union. So Montenegro is strongly and very loudly saying we support some of the things that bring us closer to the European Union, but this is just as a sort of a transition in the next few years until we become member of the European Union.
Francis.
Thank you very much. And my question is in a way a follow-up to Mary's previous question. Obviously, the enlargement process has been slow and long, and the mountain peak sometimes must seem very, very far away. And you've given the emotional and pragmatic reasons why Montenegrins would like to join the European Union. When you join the European Union, what is your concept of how the European Union should develop? Obviously, at the moment, there are people who want to have closer integration within the European Union, and many, many parties, sadly, who want the European Union not to develop any further and have a rather nationalistic concept of it, don't want closer integration. What is your concept of the future of the European Union?
Well, wait until we become member. No, seriously, it's very hard to think about that since we are spending basically all our energy and our thoughts on the actual process of getting there. So once we get there, I'm sure that we will be faced as a country and as a government, whoever is in the government in that time, with many of the challenges that are already being discussed among the current EU member states. So these challenges will need to be weighed once we are in, so that we can actually see them and feel them. But I would say that from my point of view and from the point of view of Montenegro, that of course every country wants to safeguard certain specificities, as I said, of its culture, history, national pride, and so on. But I think we would be very keen on having more integration in terms of policies within the European Union. And I think this is the winning formula, that each of the nations that are part of the European Union safeguards and maintains those things that actually make them a specific nation, which are almost all the time beautiful things that need to be cherished and maintained. But on the other side, to have more integration and coordination on the policy side, which is, I would say, a geostrategic priority of the European Union, because if it is fragmented, if it does not have a balanced and unified policy that is, of course, fulfilled or achieved through discussions and compromise, then others will always be stronger. And European Union needs to be strong.
The last question I will give to this gentleman here. You asked the first, so you shall have the last.
Apologies for not properly introducing myself before. Francis O'Donnell is the name, and I'm also a life member of the IIEA. It may interest you on the historical cultural side and the audience to know that I suspect there are very strong historical links with Montenegro going back at least to 1588, because 12 ships of the Spanish Armada that got stranded off the west coast of Ireland came from Ragusa or Dubrovnik, and many of the people who were on those ships were from the littoral, the coastline. And when I go to Perast in Montenegro, I see some very, very strong resonances, including with my own clan. So I hope that we can, at some point, culturally have a conversation about very old and medieval links between Montenegro and Ireland. Thank you.
Well, this is something that we will need to mention at the meetings that we are going to have, and hopefully we will try ways of affirming this kind of connection and relation. And that said, on a more personal, let's say, note, and you mentioned the similarities with your clan. You know that clans in Montenegro are historic facts. Still many people identify with their own clans, although it's now more part of a tradition than an actual thing. But there are many similarities that Montenegro has with Ireland, and one could think of at first sight because of the geographical distance. And on the other hand, I think all members of my team, when we were actually saying that we are traveling to Ireland, so many people said it's a country from a fairy tale. So people in Montenegro have a very, very positive and emotional relationship towards Ireland, although many of them never visited Ireland. But you should know that Ireland is in the hearts of Montenegrins.
I think those links go back to the days when lands divided and seas united. We forget they were the highways of Europe, were the seas around our shores. I know that we have questions online, but we seem to have difficulty accessing them. Sorry. So let me just, if you can bear with us just for two more questions. One asks, the EU stipulates that all bilateral disputes must be resolved prior to accession. Do you agree, or should the EU be more proactive in this area? Are you confident that all of your own issues with neighbours will be resolved prior to accession? And I think the other question, which relates to relationships with other Western Balkan countries, you have already addressed in terms of the very good relations you have with your neighbours. But that first one on should the EU be more proactive in this area?
Well, I think that both statements within the same phrase are correct. So one is that the bilateral relations should not burden the process of the European integration, and the second, that European Union should take note of it, and perhaps in some cases be not as some sort of a judge or something like that, but a participant in the discussions that I would say should always be led in good faith with the positive outcome in the mind of those that are talking about these relations or these outstanding issues. So a few countries within the European Union, but also a few countries outside of the European Union that are candidate countries, have some bilateral issues with other countries. Mostly it's with their neighbors. But what I believe is that, as I said, the European integration should not be bilateralized, so to say. and that we should all think about the positive outcome that will happen, hopefully for us in near future, when we will be together within the European Union. So certain issues will be solved, but certain issues will become perhaps less relevant and will be less of a burden for the nations that are in the same club, and that club being European Union. For us also, NATO is one of the clubs that we are member of. So these belongings to a certain club should also ease the whole situation when it comes to the bilateral issues.
Thank you very much, Deputy Prime Minister. It's been a very, very interesting discussion, and you've certainly deepened my knowledge, and I think all of our knowledge of the challenges, but also the resolve you have to meet those challenges in the next few years. We look forward to 2028 and 28 again around the table at that time. Thank you very much.
I'd like to say thank you for the hospitality, and thank you for this wonderful opportunity. And I really enjoyed the interaction that I had with the audience, to whom I also give my great thanks. Thank you.
This podcast is brought to you by the IIEA, sharing ideas, shaping policy.